All right, so we're going to talk about networking today. And I guess my talk is called Not Networking because I really think that networking has a very bad rap. It's sort of like meeting people that you don't know, exchanging your card, they don't know you, you don't know them. And that's not really what we're talking about here at all today. We're talking about building relationships that lead to opportunities and enrich your career. And so that's why I say not networking, but of course that's kind of what we're going to talk about, is how to meet people and how to build your relationships and increase your connections. So what is networking? It's really connecting with anyone. It creates opportunities for yourself, for your family, for others in your network. It's not about getting stuff, it's about sharing, getting, and giving. It can occur at professional settings, it can occur in your private life. But it's really not about just making contacts. So having a lot of contacts on LinkedIn, or a lot of people that you ever met one time, or a big stack of business cards, that's not really what networking is about. And so that's not what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about lasting relationships. So why is it important? Well, it makes your life satisfying to work with other people. It also is a great jumping off point for collaborations, both at work and privately. It's a place to look for mentors and a support system. That's kind of a whole nother seminar, how to find mentors, but it has to do with building relationships. It can really help with your confidence and your technical knowledge and having places to seek for information. It's not just for job seekers, but it is really how the job seeking world works. And I'm going to talk first about that, and then we'll talk about some of the other ways to work with networking. My goal in this presentation is really to give you practical tactics for networking, not just to tell you to do it. It's one of the most frustrating things when I was a student. Everybody said, you must network, but nobody really gave me ideas for how to do that. And that is really one of my goals, to really focus on actual tactics. So, like I said, it's not just for jobs networking, but this was a survey of 1,000 scientists, and it asked them to say, how did they get their job? So 52% said networking. But if you look at this very poorly designed scientific survey, you could see alumni network, LinkedIn, and networking workshop. Really, almost all these things are networking. And this 13% other, that's probably networking too. So a huge number of people get their jobs because they know somebody. So what is that all about? Like, we talk about that, but what does it mean? Well, what it means to employers is that if they get 7% of the resumes are from referrals, that means somebody that knows somebody. 40% of hires come from referrals when only 7% are referrals. So you're scientists, many of you are in science probably, you can guess that that's a huge percentage of those applications actually end up in a job, much bigger than any of the other categories. So, what is that about? Well, employers say that 8 out of 10 of these employers felt that referrals was their #1 source for candidates. Some 70% or so of companies actually pay their employees to get referrals. And so, again, what is that about? Well, I'll tell you a story. In one of my first jobs, I hired a technician was hired. And, he qualified very well for the job. It was not a referral. It was a resume sent into our company. And 2 weeks after he started, he had to be escorted from the building by security because he pulled a knife on someone who borrowed one of his pipettes. And so, wow, that is scary. So I call this the scary factor. People who you have no history with and who come and interview can usually seem sane, normal, and pleasant for one day of interviewing, maybe even a few follow-up calls. But when you bring them in, they're actually really off the rails. So anytime someone can give you a resume and say, hey, I know Joanne, I've known her for years. She talks a lot, but she's really good at the bench. You should interview her. So referrals, they don't get you the job, but they get you the interview, and they get you an opportunity to present yourself with the confidence of the hiring manager that you're not going to go off the rails and be one of the scary people. So this is a huge factor in hiring. If you have a pile of 100 resumes and 3 of them are referrals, those are the ones for sure that you're going to look at first. So how did I move through my career? Well, my first was a referral. My advisor, this is before the days of the internet. So if you can imagine, all the jobs were in the newspaper. I know that is a bit hard to imagine. So my advisor knew people in biotech and in pharma in the early days of biotech, introduced me to 3 people. I had 3 interviews. I got 1 offer, and I took the job and worked at that place for 15 years. Somewhere in the middle of my work at BASF and Abbott, I started working on RNAi, first paper, 1998, for those of you that remember. I got very interested in RNAi and immune cells. I developed a bit of a reputation. I met a lot of people working on difficult RNAi development of technology. And one of those people I stayed in contact with for about 7 years, 8 years. And then toward the end of my time at Abbott, when I was looking to move on, I hadn't really started my job search yet. We had lunch, and that connection said, hey, I'm starting a company with the Nobel Prize winner in RNAi. We're looking for a research director. Would you be our research director? And I said, yes, I would like to do that. That sounds fantastic. And about a month later, that's what I did. And I moved to RxI, and was another fantastic career experience. So, and finally, Addgene was looking for an executive director when I got laid off from RxI, fairly common in biotech. And I knew both one of the founders of Addgene, Melina Fan, and also I knew many of the board members who, of course, when you're the executive director, that's who's hiring you. So one of the most important things, though, is that these last 2 jobs that I had were never advertised. So one of the most important things about job hunting and using relationships to job hunt is that the most fun jobs are never going to make it to the newspaper or online. So to find out about those jobs at all, you have to know people. And that's certainly true for Addgene. It was a recruiter-only search, and if people hadn't known me and known that I was looking for work, I would never have had that opportunity. So one of the things about meeting people is you can't wait until you need the network. Like, you can't wait when you need a job next week or next month. You have to be doing it all the time. You can do it strategically by meeting people in the field or the field you want to go into, but you can also be not strategic. Anybody that you meet, you never know. It's going to be potential that could someday help you. So anytime you meet people, you're networking. And I see the questions coming in, and both of your questions I'm going to get to. So I will get back to the questions. Thanks for asking. Okay. So I have this picture here of this very desperate guy holding on to this ankle. Networking and building relationships is a little bit like dating. If you're desperate, people will sense it. So the right time to meet people is when you're calm, collected, and not desperate. Because desperate scares people a little bit, and it makes them pull back. They get a little nervous. They won't be able to help you. We're going to talk a lot about tactics for networking and how not to be desperate and how to do it as part of your normal life. Not something that you just kick into because, oh, I need a job next week. That's not the way to do it. Okay, so everybody hates networking. I already have one question. I get very nervous meeting people. I'm married to an introvert. I'm an extrovert. He's super introverted, like would rather do anything than go to an event. But he super likes the technology that he works on and loves to talk one-on-one. Introverted people are actually excellent networkers because they have one very important skill. They're excellent listeners. So events might not be the way that someone who's introverted networks, but they might meet one-on-one with people. My favorite way of networking is actually just getting involved in something. Being on a committee, running an organization, going to a certain type of event or planning a program, doing work with people. That's the easiest kind of natural networking. You're going to get to know those people. The people that I've served on committees with through my career, starting with the Abbott Diversity Council, through the Association for Women in Science, Healthcare Businesswomen's Association, and many other organizations I volunteered with, that's where my best network comes from. People who really know me. Those are the people also who are most going to be able to help you and you're going to be most comfortable talking to. So I really suggest that you make networking feel normal. Now, this isn't to say that you shouldn't reach out to the colleagues around you. So people want to network with someone important. Who's important? The people who are around you are important. These are your future colleagues, the people around you. So when I was at Abbott and I had 2 little kids and was pretty tired at lunch and just wanted to take a nap, I made it my business to have lunch with another human being absolutely twice a week, no matter what. And if Friday came and I hadn't had lunch with someone else, I would find someone for Friday lunch or coffee in the afternoon and make sure to meet them. For me, that was a great checklist kind of way. So one person had a question, how do I make time for networking? It's very hard. We're very good, technical people are very good at making a checklist and making goals. I really recommend that you do something measurable some way that you can actually clock yourself and get it in your schedule, whether that's joining an organization that you work with or having lunch with another person once a week, twice a week, having coffee once a week, whatever it is, make yourself some deliverable goals. That's the best way to reach goals anyway. When you go to a talk or a conference, it's really natural to sit next to someone you don't know and say, hi, I'm Joanne. I'm here because I'm interested in the speaker because of X. I've worked in this field for a while. I'd like to see what's developed. Why are you here? You know, so that may not be for someone super introverted, but even if you're slightly extroverted, that's an incredibly normal time to meet someone new. It's good to meet with people that are already in your network that you already know and stay in touch with them. It's also good to do informational interviews. I have a blog about that, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later. Informational interviews are great because you can really practice talking to strangers. And talking to strangers is really pretty much what networking is all about. So when you're networking, another good thing to do is to be ready to ask people for help. And you don't want to only be asking people for help. That's why you don't wait till the last minute. You don't wait till you're desperate. But if you do need something, if you need information or connections, or you're looking to meet a certain kind of person, it's actually really good to tell people. And the more specific you are, the better it is. So when I got laid off from RxI, I had decided I was not going to commute to Worcester anymore. I had commuted from Newton to Worcester for 18 years, and I really, really wanted to actually be in Cambridge. I really wanted to work in Cambridge. I had lived in Cambridge as a grad student, and I really, even though people don't like commuting to Cambridge, I really, really wanted to do that. So I basically told people, I'm looking for a job in alliance management. That wasn't the job I got, but that's what I told people I thought I wanted. At mid-sized biotech companies in the Cambridge area. Do you know anybody who works at those companies? It's a very concrete ask. Most people will actually think in their head, hey, do I know anybody? Oh yeah, I do. I'm happy to introduce you to somebody. Here's my card, get in touch with me. Simple asks like that, that are not like, hey, can you give me a job? Because that's a big ask. People are actually really willing to help, and not everyone will help. So another thing about networking is to really get past the no. Some people will say no, just forget about those people. There are tons of helpful people. The reason why Benjamin Franklin is on this slide is actually has to do with people liking to help. Turns out that helping is actually a thing that humans like to do, and it makes us feel good. So Benjamin Franklin figured this out, and it's turned into something that's now called the psychological Benjamin Franklin effect. And in his autobiography, so Benjamin Franklin is one of the founding fathers of the United States. If you're not from the US, you might not know that. And he was on the Pennsylvania legislature, and he wasn't a very nice guy. Very talented, very smart, kind of a scientist, kind of an all-around guy, knew a lot, politician, scientist, many things, but he wasn't that nice. So when someone on the Pennsylvania legislature didn't like him, he would do this thing where he would ask them to borrow a book. They would loan him the book, he would read it, and then he would return it and praise them for how smart they were to get that book. And then also, not just to get that book, but how grateful he was for their favor. And what he discovered was that people who did him a favor liked him better. So there's this concept of cognitive dissonance that human beings have. If I helped you, I must like you. So someone that doesn't like you, that helps you a bunch of times and you keep being grateful for, wow, that's great. They're suddenly going to like you better. This is kind of an amazing trick. If there's someone at work who you're not getting along with, ask them for restaurant advice, like every week for the next, however, like takeout advice, I guess would be now. Maybe some activities to do during self-distancing would be a good thing. And take their advice. And when you take that advice, thank them profusely for the favor. I guarantee you they will like you better after this experience. So this is kind of if I tell everybody, it won't work as well, but it actually works well because it's human nature. So take advantage of the Benjamin Franklin effect. Actually ask people for help when you need it, or information or connections or whatever the help is. Okay, so I was going to do an activity, but I think we're a few too many people to do it. So I mentioned before that networking is actually really talking to strangers. And one of the important things about talking to strangers is like simulating conversation. And this is something that you can work at. If someone says to you, hey, how are you doing? And you just say, fine, that's not really going to get a conversation going. Also, if you don't ask them how they're doing, you're not going to get a conversation going. If you're looking over their shoulder, if someone more interesting is over there, you're not going to get a conversation going. If you're not listening, it's going to be hard to get a conversation going. One of my favorite things about meeting strangers and talking with them is figuring out how long it takes me to find something we have in common. And I am pretty good at this. I can do this with people from anywhere in the world because my job allows me to meet people from all over the world. Also, I'm ready to prepare. I'm prepared and I'm ready when I'm going to be meeting people with some information that I'm willing to share. So if someone said to me, how are you doing today? I'd be like, I'm pretty good, but I'm a little bit worried about my parents. They live in Florida and they're kind of isolated there. And what kind of things are making you anxious these days? Life is pretty weird. So I'm willing to have a genuine, attentive conversation, not a surface conversation. In this country and in many countries, that means sharing a little bit about your personal self and not just talking about work right away. And so if you are networking for work purposes, it's really good to be ready to talk a little bit about yourself and what information you're willing to share. Really great practice for talking to strangers is doing informational interviews. And Angela's posting the link in the chat, and you can get, you'll be able to get all these references associated with the talk when we post it on YouTube after I present today. But we have a blog at blog.addgene.org on what is an informational interview. And that's it's a meeting where you just have coffee or chat with someone about what they do without asking for a job. It's very non-threatening, and it's a really great way to develop relationships. So I really recommend that you read the blog before you embark on that because it has some good tips for how to make the most of informational interviews. Okay, so events are good. And even if you're introverted, there are ways to work events. Why are events good? Because that's where you meet unexpected people. That's where someone extremely unusual who might have a job you could never imagine or be a resource you could never imagine will show up and you can meet. Also, networking events are for networking. And so it's pretty natural there to behave in a networking way, which means like if you meet someone and it's not going anywhere, the conversation isn't interesting, you can say, hey, it's been nice meeting you. And then you can go get a drink and move on and meet someone else. So I do recommend that you get out of your comfort zone and think about trying to attend some events when we can all attend events again. Maybe you're attending Zoom events these days. So I think we will get back to meeting people in person. Developing relationships really takes some of that in-person meeting. I think now what we're doing with Zoom and social distancing is we're maintaining our already good relationships. But developing new relationships really does take some in-person getting out there. So I hope that we'll get back to that. So it is good to have a business card, and there's kind of a tricky reason. So it's another psychological trick. It turns out they did this study that if people exchange business cards, they're something like 5 times more likely to get back to you if you email them. Something about exchanging property. And I'm very technically savvy, so I would love to just beam the information to my Evernote account and meet people, get people's information that way. But the physical card can actually give you an advantage. One advantage is if you give someone their card, they have to give you your card. And so that is really it's really a kind of trick you can use, and it's a good way to end a conversation at a networking event too. You can say, hey, it's been really nice meeting you. Here's my card. Can I have yours? Thanks. I'm going to go meet some other people. Do that a few times. You'll get good at it. It's totally acceptable at a networking event and a really good way to meet lots of people. Now, one really important thing about events, you don't really have to meet a lot of people. Actually, if you meet one person and have a meaningful conversation with them, that event has been a complete success. And so it's not quantity, it is the quality of the interactions that you are having that makes a difference. And you never know where that can happen. I was at Addgene, most years, almost every year, we win this Best Place to Work award. We love that. We're really proud of ourselves. And they have an event every year where you have to go and get the award. And it's usually very loud. I'm a little older. I don't love the music being quite that loud. And it's usually kind of very hectic. The hecticness of it is not appealing to me. Also, I was at this one event and they were serving like alcoholic kombucha and some strange food, and none of that appealed to me. So I went and found a bartender and got a seltzer with lemon, and went into the corner and tried to stay out of the way. So another woman came up to me and said, "Hey, where did you get that seltzer?" I said, "Oh, that guy over there." She said, "Stay put. I'm going to go get one." And she came back, and the two of us were sort of hiding in the corner trying to avoid the loudest of the noise. And she turned out to be the COO of the company that makes Guitar Hero, which I found fascinating that this was a woman my age who had this position. And we talked for the next hour and eventually followed up with coffee. And we really, really had a lot to talk about and enjoyed meeting each other. So you never know where you're going to find someone who's going to be interesting and enrich your time, enrich your life. It's really worth focusing instead of looking around for a lot of people. So my homeworks would be in the coming weeks as we come out of our, as we come out of our isolation, how will you attend events? What organizations will you join? Maybe now you can look for online networking events to try something out. I see a lot of them being advertised. Mass Bio in Massachusetts is doing that. Go with a friend. Don't let it make only the two of you to talk to each other. But it does help if you're talking to someone and you can bring your friend into the conversation. That's a good thing to do together. Again, it only needs to be one person, even virtual coffee. That's great. Okay, so I'm seeing a couple questions coming about following up. So here's the relationship part. Relationships need nurturing. So when you get active in an organization, following up is natural, because if you work on something, you're going to see the same people over and over. And so that follow-up is very natural and not weird. I'm going to share with you now one of my most important rules of networking. If it feels creepy, don't do it. If you're uncomfortable reaching out to someone because you have nothing to say to them, don't reach out to them. If you have nothing to say to them, it's just going to be creepy. So that's not helpful. But if you talked with someone and you discovered that you found a paper that might help their research, that might be a good thing that you want to send them. Maybe you have something that you can invite them to. Maybe you have something you can give to them, information that would help them. If someone does you a favor, send a thank you note. Schedule coffee to talk to someone. All they'll do is say no, or maybe they'll say yes, and you'll have a nice time. Be prepared for that engaged, active conversation with someone. Maybe you want to follow the industry, like in the Fierce newsletters. And when you see that their company gets money, maybe you want to say congratulations. If you see that their company is not doing well, maybe you want to reach out and say you're sorry, you saw the bad news. You can use LinkedIn for a lot of this. You don't have to go down the LinkedIn rabbit hole. I'll talk a little bit more about LinkedIn later. LinkedIn can be a fantastic relationship maintaining tool, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think more important, though, when people ask about following up, is I think about ways I can help. I'm always thinking about how can I help. And if you listen to someone, if you make a connection for them, if they ask you for a favor that you can do that's easy, that good work will pay you back 1,000,000 times over. And so it's really good to think about in that way, not what can you do for me, but what can I do for you? So it doesn't always come directly around, but that good karma will eventually come around. Like I would say one time, my daughter many years ago, was home from, was looking for a summer job, and she was out of the country for the year, so she was having trouble. And I went on my LinkedIn and I said, hey, my daughter's looking for a job. She types really fast and can do, pretty much anything in the office. Does anybody have an internship? And, like a week later, she got a call from the Harvard Tech Transfer Office offering her a summer job. And she calls me and she says, Mom, did you have something to do with this? And I was like, I don't know. So it turned out I had done a favor for someone in the Harvard Tech Transfer Office in talking to their child about a science project they were doing. And when she saw my plea for an internship for my daughter, she said, oh, I can help, Joanne. We could use some office work. And how great that my daughter had the Harvard Tech Transfer Office on her resume. It was fantastic for her going into college. She worked there for a couple summers, actually. So, those kinds of favors, they go around, they come around. You do things for people, they do things for you. More importantly, so this is my LinkedIn network. There used to be a plugin in LinkedIn where you could map your network. I'm in the middle, and those different colors are my different networks. Like one of them is like my RXI network, and one of them is I think the big blue one is my Women in Science network. I think that little brown one is Jewish people that go to my temple. And then, you know, different parts of your life, you have different parts of your network. I have over 4,800 connections, almost all of whom I have met personally or interacted with. There is no way I can stay in touch with 4,800 people all the time, nor do I have to. That is not the point. When you have a nice interaction with someone and you have built even a little bit of a relationship, you don't have to stay in touch with them every day, but hopefully they'll come to mind, or you'll come to their mind when you need each other again, or when you can help each other. So I can give you a very specific example of this. When I was in grad school, I was pretty much the only grad student in my department who had a child was Michelle. And Michelle Swanson was my idol because I was pregnant. I had my son when I was a grad student, and no one understood what I was going through at all. Certainly my lab did not understand what I was going through. Like when I called the lab to tell them I had had my son, because it was 2 weeks early, I said, "Hey, Bruce, can you take my plates out of the incubator?" And he said, "Oh, sure, Joanne," and he hung up. And I called back and I said, "Bruce, don't you want me to tell you why I want you to take my plates out of the incubator?" And he said, "Joanne, I haven't had my coffee yet. What do you want?" And I said, "Bruce, I had a baby." And he said, "Okay, great, bye." And he hung up. So I called Michelle, and Michelle was like really, really helpful. Well, I graduated, she graduated, she went off to academia, I went off to pharma, and we didn't see each other for something like 20 years. 20 years later, I'm emailing UMich PDA, Postdoc Association at umich.edu, and she is the faculty in charge of the Postdoc Association. And within 30 seconds, she emails me back. She's like, "Are you coming to visit? I can't wait to see you. How many times do you want to speak? Can I introduce you to the Grad Student Association?" Even though we hadn't seen each other in 20 years, that relationship was a positive one. So having positive relationships with people, that's the follow-up. If you don't need something from them, you don't have to call. If you can offer something, you definitely should call. But if you have a positive experience, those people, especially in the science community, they'll come around and they'll enter your life when you need them or when you can help each other. Okay, a little bit about social media. Someone asked about networking on Twitter. I love Twitter. I've met tons of people on Twitter. I get invited to speak on Twitter all the time. Angela shared a link about using LinkedIn as using Twitter as a social media as a scientist. I have one blog about using LinkedIn. So I think you guys probably all know we're past the time where I have to remind you that you shouldn't put dumb stuff on social media that you're going to be embarrassed about. This stuff will follow you forever, so don't do that. Should you be on LinkedIn? If you are planning to transition out of academia, you definitely should be on LinkedIn. It's weird not to. And please see my blog for some very specific tips on how to best start using LinkedIn. It should look fantastic. Don't bother connecting with people you've never met or you don't know. It's not a very useful way to make connections. You know, you really want to use it in a very professional way. So please see my blog for some very specific tips about that. Don't ask people you don't know for certain kinds of favors. People tell me that you can reach out through LinkedIn sort of generically for informational interviews. That may be true, but it's usually better to leapfrog your network and to use your current network to meet people that you should talk to. So referrals are always better than a cold call. That's just normal. People only have so much time in their day. If there's a connection, it's going to be easier. Okay, so where can you practice? Well, I talked about joining an organization in your department, in your organization, on a committee at your organization. Maybe you want to join a professional association and get active on a committee there. You can be open to online networking opportunities, and that's what we're doing today. I'm on Zoom, either having a meeting or chatting with somebody most of the day now, and it's great. I'm staying in touch with a lot of people and even getting in touch with people that I haven't seen in a long time. Learning what's appropriate is part of being out there and practicing, I would say. So before I get to questions, I'll just share a couple takeaway messages. Don't wait until you need a job. I can't say this strongly enough. Get involved in something now. It doesn't have to be networking, like events, but get on a committee. If it feels creepy, don't do it. I see a few questions about what's creepy. I'll try and address them after the webinar. And finally, that secret of first impressions. If you go to an event or if you meet someone, prepare some conversation. Be prepared to share some personal stories. Be prepared with questions that you've actually just developed to address the person that you're talking to. And actually there were a lot of questions I could see in the chat about, I want to meet this famous PI, or I want to meet this important person, or I want to meet a specific person. Really, that's not going to help you. Someone who's not at your level or who doesn't have any reason to connect with you, they're not going to be easy to connect with, and they're not going to be helpful to you either. What you want to do is focus on people with whom you develop a rapport, people that you like. You do not have to network with people that you don't like. It won't help you anyway. So the idea is not to force yourself or to purposely target people. The idea is to meet people so you can see who you jive with, and those are the people you want to spend time coordinating with, following up with. Those relationships will develop extremely naturally. And that's what we're talking about, to make it less forced. So I already mentioned the Addgene blog. We have tons of blogs, career blogs there on how to, on networking in different situations, in different ways. It'll get down to some real specifics if you want more tactics. So please take a look at the blog. Our YouTube also has some great career videos. We have these great ebooks at Addgene, and the most recent one that was put together is this fabulous science career guide. It's a free ebook. You should definitely look for that. It is so much useful information in one place. I really recommend it. So what's Addgene doing now? A couple people have asked me. So we're open and shipping. Our mission is to help scientists share materials and to increase collaboration. We're doing that very actively. Scientists studying coronavirus and this pandemic are needing materials more than ever, and we're increasing our collection of materials that can go to for-profit institutions. We're really proud of the work that we're able to do as a critical organization, being open with a skeleton staff working super hard to try and keep up and keep things moving. Addgene has plasmids, so circular pieces of DNA for those of you that aren't scientists. Also viral vectors, we have pooled screening libraries, we have all kinds of different materials. We have a great website that you can navigate to find stuff. So we usually distribute about 750 items a day. Right now we're about 1/10 that. We can't wait till the world of science is open again, so we're doing all kinds of things to prepare for that. We've shared over 1.25 million plasmids with scientists around the world, so it's really on a pretty big scale. I talked about our viral service. We have a lot of quality control. You should check out the database. Every Plasmid page is chock full of great information. We also have a fantastic team that answers your technical and delivery information. We have fabulous customer and technical support. From a career perspective, since many of you may be on a job hunt or looking for careers, I want to really shout out for nonprofit careers. Nonprofits are incredibly diverse. Some of the most interesting and exciting roles are in nonprofits. These are all the things that scientists do at Addgene, and it's incredibly diverse. And this is just one nonprofit. There are tons. There's hundreds of different types of careers you can move to from a science career or a technical career to contribute to the world in a meaningful way. I love being in nonprofit. I've always done a lot of nonprofit volunteer work, but working in nonprofit is really special. So we want to make you aware because it's a sector that a lot of scientists and technical people don't know about. So Addgene is always here building relationships. How can we help? We love to get to know you. There are a lot of ways to follow us and a lot of ways to get to know us. So I really look forward to interacting with any of you that reach out to Addgene or reach out to me. And I'm happy now to take your questions. So I'm going to go back to the questions. It's going to take me a second to get organized here because I'm going to start from the beginning. Okay. One person asks, they're finding it difficult to carve out time as your network grows to keep in touch with all of them. I think I've covered this already. You can't possibly keep in touch with all of them. The answer is really just to be nice in the moment, be in touch with the people that you're interacting with. And especially, at least in my community, the science community is pretty small. You'll see those people again and you'll have another opportunity to develop a relationship. There's no way that you can stay in touch with everybody in your network all the time. In fact, that enters into creepy land. So if you're like emailing people that you haven't seen in 5 years just to say hi, it's kind of weird. But if you ran into them at an event and you caught up with them and then you found out something that you might suggest for them, that's not weird. So I'm trying to define what that creepy is. You know, I have this one guy who I met about 20 years ago. I don't remember how we met. I have no idea who he is. Every year he sends me a lengthy email with an extremely personal update about his family. And every year I reply and say, it's nice to hear from you, but we really have nothing to do with each other. We're not in the same field. It feels like he's just sending it to me like, I don't know, it's weird. And it's quite personal. That's kind of creepy. So don't be creepy. Okay. Someone mentioned here that they get nervous meeting people. I really recommend that you think about working on a committee. That's a great way to meet people and to do volunteer work. If you're very nervous about conversation and meeting new people, that's one really good tactic to get more used to it. How to start a conversation with someone? Well, I think the best thing you can do is ask a question and be really interested in the answer. So if you ask someone a question and you're not really serious about wanting to hear and you don't have any information to share, as I've said, there's never going to be a conversation. So if the conversation goes like this, hi, how are you? Good. Then we're done. We're done here. There's nothing else we can do. So be ready with some questions. You can ask what brings you to this event, or how are you weathering this current crisis in the world, or what things are you worrying about today? But just be genuine and be willing to share some information about yourself. Okay, I meet someone at a conference and don't really know what to say. How do I not sound desperate? Don't sound desperate. Just go for a beer, have a cup of coffee, tell them about your life. Don't ask for anything. Just get to know people. Find out what they do. You will find out the coolest things. I'm actually at Addgene, I'm sort of known to be a bad interviewer because I tend to get off track. We'll have a client, we'll have a candidate in and people will say, oh, you know, he was really shy. I had a lot of trouble talking with him. And I'll say, what do you mean trouble talking with him? He's so interesting. He's a champion fly fisherman. Did you not find that out? Like, I love to find out the interesting things about people. So if you have that in your head, you will find out those interesting things. LinkedIn. Do I have some advice? People ignore messages. Yes, people ignore messages, maybe because they don't know you. I wouldn't bother messaging or connecting with people that you don't know. I think it's a waste of time. I would use your network to have referrals and to be introduced to people. Please see my blog, as I mentioned. It has a lot of specific details on how to appropriately use LinkedIn. Also, some people will never answer. They're just too busy, or maybe they just don't have time, or they're not interested. Don't worry about the no people. Always move on to the yes people. There will always be people who will say yes. How can you reach out to your network broadly when your PI isn't supportive of you leaving academia for industry? Oh, that is a really much bigger question than I can answer. If you want to reach out to me, I think we can have an offline conversation. I all wish that you would choose better mentors who will be supportive of your choice of any career. It is unethical and completely unrealistic for your PIs to think that you will all be in academia. Only 10% or so of you will have academic jobs 10 years from now, of those of you that are in academia now. Meet people who are in industry and have coffee with them. You don't have to tell your PI. Reach out broadly, join networking events, go to professional associations where there are people. And I can be very more specific about that if I know where you live. For example, in Massachusetts, we have Mass Bio. It's a fantastic way to meet people who are working outside of academia and a great place to start networking. Association for Women in Science, Women in Bio, Healthcare Business Women's Association, there's a biotech networking group that you can go to. You should do all those things on your own time. You don't have to tell your PI. Okay, you're at a conference, how to talk to a PI. I don't know why you would have to talk to a PI unless you're specifically telling that PI that you want a job in their lab. Network with your peers and have a great time. 5 years from now, your peers will be in senior positions. And so the PIs are going to talk to other PIs. That's what they do. That's what's fun. That's who they want to have beer with, their old friends. So don't knock on doors where there's no reason. If you have a specific reason for talking to someone and a specific question, sure, go ahead. They'll probably answer you. Okay. I'm an undergraduate. I meet eminent scientists only at conferences. I wouldn't bother networking with eminent scientists if you are an undergraduate. If you have the opportunity to meet one, fantastic. If not, network with your peers. Your peers are your future colleagues. Much more important than networking with someone important. I think someone in the chat actually suggests linking in with an email, a PI that you want to meet before the conference. I think emailing or reaching out to someone that you've never met that's much more senior to you is creepy. Some of them will be approachable. I frankly wouldn't. I just, reaching out to strangers is not effective, especially when they're not your peers. So that is, I just wouldn't bother with that. I think you're wasting your time. Let's see, I meet with new people at events and have nice talks and exchange cards, but then we just add one another on LinkedIn, and apparently later they don't stay connected. So I would schedule coffee with someone that you hit it off with, not random people, but if there's someone that you really thought, you enjoyed talking to, have coffee with them. All it takes is one coffee to develop a relationship. That's pretty much enough. So that's worth trying. Okay. Once I have a connection with a PI personally, can I text them on WhatsApp to wish them on festivals, or is it creepy? I don't know how close you are in that relationship. If it's someone that you see regularly, I would say, sure, you can wish them, happy festivals. Otherwise, I think it's creepy. If it's someone that you've seen one time and suddenly you're wishing them happy holidays, that's creepy. And I'm using the word creepy sort of as a very broad adjective here, but if it's someone that you see every week and you have a relationship, for sure you can wish happy holidays to everyone. So that's just a very specific ask about creepy. Okay, let's see. How to write a message to a recruiter in LinkedIn so that they reply. The best way to meet recruiters is to be introduced by people, so broaden your network naturally and ask the people that you know to introduce you to recruiters. Sometimes they will reply to you, especially if your resume, whole nother seminar, if your profile looks correct, they will reach out to you. So learning about how to write a good LinkedIn profile with good keywords when you're job hunting can be really helpful. Please look that up. Let's see. Okay. If not networking with superior people, how should we get a job? Yep, referrals don't come from superior people. They come from your peers. So at Addgene, if someone refers their friends to a job, we look much closer at those recommendations all the time. So it's knowing peers that's going to help you with referrals. People that are senior to you are unlikely to refer you unless they know you very well. So if you're thinking about networking as meeting important people, that is not the way to do it. Okay, I gave my business card to someone who went to my poster presentation at a conference and reached out to me a few months later to see if I was interested in a job, and I ended up getting it. I start this summer. My PI didn't have connections in industry, but I built connections over time. Anna, nice to see you. I know who that is. Congratulations. I'm super excited about your job. So I think Anna is saying, definitely give your card out, be open. You never know where the connections are going to come from. Okay, that's the last question. Thanks everybody so much for coming. This webinar will be posted on YouTube, on the Addgene YouTube channel within a few days. And I hope that you all, good luck with your networking and good luck with meeting people. If you do one thing different this week because of this talk, I think you will learn how to be more successful in building relationships. Good luck everybody. I hope you are well and healthy in mind and body. All the best.